The training camp smelled of gunpowder and sweat. Heavy boots stomped across the gravel yard. Men barked orders, laughed too loudly, and tested their strength on one another like restless wolves. And then there was Sophia, 32 years old, slender, brown hair tied neatly back, eyes the color of winter steel, cold, unreadable. She wasn't here to fight. She wasn't here to impress. She was here for one simple reason: to apply for a medical assistant position at the camp. Most of the recruits were men, veterans of past battles. They carried their scars like trophies and their egos like armor. To them, Sophia was nothing more than a quiet shadow in the background, a woman who didn't belong. They mocked her, though never to her face. "Nurse," they'd whisper with smirks, probably here to hand out band-aids and clean up messes. But Sophia never flinched. She cleaned their barracks. She disinfected wounds. She polished practice rifles until they gleamed. And she moved through the facility like smoke, always present but never noticed. Soon, the men gave her a nickname: the Ghost Nurse, a shadow who healed, a shadow who never asked for thanks. It was a blistering afternoon when everything changed. The recruits had gathered at the range, rifles loaded, targets lined up at a distance. The air was filled with the sharp tang of oil and metal. A new recruit, eager, jittery, fumbled with his weapon. The rifle misfired. The recoil slammed into his shoulder. He screamed. Blood sprayed across the gravel, soaking into his uniform. For a moment, everyone froze. Even the sergeant stood dumbstruck. And then Sophia moved. She was on him in an instant, her hands already working. Pressure on the artery, gauze in place. Her fingers moved like clockwork, fast, precise, confident. Not the clumsy patchwork of a beginner, but the flawless technique of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. "Someone get the medic," a recruit shouted. "I am the medic." Her voice was calm, steady, cold as steel. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. Within minutes, the wound was secured, the recruit stabilized. Silence hung over the range. Dozens of eyes stared at her, not with respect, not yet. With suspicion, with curiosity. How did the Ghost Nurse know so much? That night, Sergeant Robert Kane gave her a new nickname. He was a gruff ex-Marine, his voice always carrying a mocking edge. "Nurse Know-It-All," he sneered in front of the others. "Since you think you can do everything better than the rest of us." The recruits laughed. Kane laughed hardest of all. But Sophia didn't. She simply nodded, finished cleaning the rifles, and returned to her quarters without a word. If anyone had looked closer, they might have seen it, the flicker in her eyes. Not anger, not pain, something else, something heavier. The patience of someone who carried a past too heavy to share. The nights were when she revealed her true self. When the barracks fell silent, Sophia would retreat to the medical bay. There, under the dim glow of a single lamp, she worked with mechanical precision. She cleaned scalpels, refilled bandages, laid out surgical tools with the same care a soldier lays out his weapons. And always, she wore an old military watch. Its scratched glass caught the light as her fingers brushed it gently, as if drawing strength from it. Sometimes she stared at it for long minutes, not moving, just remembering. One night, in her private quarters, she pulled out a photograph. The frame was old, the wood chipped at the edges. Inside was a man in a sharp military uniform. His eyes were piercing, his jaw set firm. Michael Phantom Whitaker, her father, a legend, a sniper whose name had been whispered across battlefields. He had made impossible shots in impossible conditions, rain, wind, darkness. But to Sophia, he was just Dad. Her childhood hadn't been like other kids. While her friends slept in on weekends, she was awake before dawn, kneeling beside her father in the cold morning air. He taught her how to read the wind, how to feel the earth under her boots, how to breathe so steady that even her heartbeat wouldn't betray her aim. "It's not about the shot, Sophia," he used to tell her, his voice patient but firm. "It's about everything before the shot. The breath, the stillness, the silence. When you understand that, you'll never miss." She had learned it all: trajectories, bullet drop, equipment maintenance. But most of all, she had learned his rule. This isn't for killing, he'd said. It's for protecting. Remember that. He was gone now. 3 years in the ground. And she had left the military soon after. No explanations. No goodbyes. She carried his lessons and his watch, but she had sworn never to pick up a rifle again. Not ever. And yet, as she stood in her quarters that night, staring at the photo of her father, something stirred deep inside her. A whisper. A promise waiting to be tested. Have you ever carried a secret talent, something so powerful, so dangerous, that you swore you'd never reveal it? Sophia had. And tomorrow, the world would finally see it. The next morning, the camp would announce a mandatory marksmanship test. And Sophia's vow of silence would shatter with a single shot. Morning came with the sharp blast of a whistle. The recruits groaned, boots scraping the gravel as they formed up in the yard. Sophia slipped quietly into the crowd, unnoticed as always, her medical kit slung across her shoulder. Then came the announcement. Sergeant Kane stepped forward, grinning wide. His voice was gravel mixed with whiskey. Listen up. Today's a special one. Mandatory marksmanship test. Every last one of you. Yes, even the ghost who thinks she's just here to patch up cuts. His eyes found Sophia. He raised an M24 sniper rifle, cradling it like a challenge. Come on, nurse know-it-all. Let's see if you can handle a real weapon. Laughter rippled through the yard. Someone muttered, she'll probably shoot her own foot. Another whispered, she doesn't even belong here. Sophia didn't reply. She just stepped forward, her gaze fixed not on Kane, but on the rifle in his hands. The range was set. Targets stood 300 meters away, their white centers gleaming under the harsh sun. Kane smirked as he placed the rifle into Sophia's hands. Try not to embarrass yourself. Or do. Either way, this should be entertaining. A chorus of chuckles echoed behind him. Sophia looked down at the rifle. For a long, quiet moment, the world around her blurred. She wasn't holding Sergeant Kane's weapon anymore. She was holding her father's. And, in her head, his voice returned. When the moment comes, you'll know what to do. She stepped to the line. Her posture shifted. Shoulders squared. Elbows locked. Breath slowed. The timid nurse vanished. In her place stood something else. Something the recruits had never seen before. Sophia adjusted the scope with the ease of muscle memory, her fingers steady. She lowered herself into a perfect shooting stance. The whispers died away. The laughter stilled. Even Kane stopped smiling. The range fell into silence. Sophia inhaled, exhaled. Her heartbeat slowed until it matched the rhythm of the earth beneath her. She squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle tore through the air like thunder. The bullet streaked across the range, invisible but unstoppable. A second later, the target jerked. Dead center. Not just a bullseye. The exact mathematical middle. Drilled clean through. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Recruits stared wide-eyed. Some leaned forward, as if their disbelief might change the sight through the spotting scope. Perfect shot, someone whispered. But it was more than perfect. It was surgical, unforgiving, absolute. Sophia stood, calmly securing the rifle, her face unreadable. Then, an older man stepped forward from the back of the crowd. His uniform was worn. His hair streaked with gray. He was a retired instructor, one who had fought alongside legends long before these recruits were born. His face had gone pale. His voice trembled as he spoke. That stance, that shot, he swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on Sophia. That's Michael Whitaker's technique. Phantom Whitaker. The name hung in the air like a spark in dry grass. The recruits murmured, confusion turning into awe. Michael Whitaker. The sniper who never missed. The ghost who haunted every battlefield he touched. And now his daughter stood before them. Sophia said nothing. She simply handed the rifle back to Sergeant Kane. His smirk was gone. His jaw tightened. For the first time, the man looked uneasy. The silence stretched, thick with questions no one dared ask. Who was this woman really? That night, whispers flooded the camp. The ghost nurse was no ghost at all. She was something far more dangerous, something far more powerful. But Sophia? She sat alone in the medical bay, polishing scalpels under the dim light, her father's watch resting against her wrist. Her hands trembled for the first time in years. Not from fear, not from pride, from memory. Her father's words echoed again. This skill isn't for killing, it's for protecting. She had broken her vow. She had picked up the rifle again. And deep down, she knew it wouldn't be the last time. Have you ever revealed a part of yourself you swore you'd keep hidden, only to realize it was the very thing the world needed to see? Sophia had. And the consequences were only just beginning. In just 3 days, the camp would face a simulation drill gone wrong. And only Sophia's forbidden skill could save them. The camp sirens split the air 3 days later. A piercing, mechanical wail that sent recruits scrambling, boots pounding like thunder across the gravel. Sophia looked up from her medical bay, her hands still gloved, a tray of instruments half cleaned. The overhead lights flickered red, washing the walls in warning. An officer's voice crackled through the loudspeakers. Simulation alert. Hostile sniper team approaching the eastern perimeter. All personnel to bunkers immediately. This is not a drill. The recruits surged in panic. Some shoved helmets on, others fumbled with gear. But orders soon gave way to chaos. A handful of young recruits, new, barely trained, were separated in the rush. They bolted in the wrong direction, toward the eastern building. Sophia saw it happen. She felt her chest tighten. The simulation was meant to be safe. But everyone knew better. The paint rounds the snipers carried were fast and brutal. At close range, they could break ribs, blind eyes, scar faces. And the stranded recruits? They were walking straight into the crosshairs. Protocol was simple. Wait for the tactical response team. Extraction in 20 minutes. But Sophia knew the truth. The simulation snipers would reach that building in 10 minutes, and the rookies would be torn apart. In the bunker, panic swirled. Orders barked. Radios squawked with static. But Sophia stood frozen, her father's voice rising in her mind like smoke from an old fire. When lives are on the line, Sophia, there is no second place. There is only the shot that matters. Her eyes darted to the clock. 8 minutes left. She slipped away quietly. No one noticed as the ghost nurse vanished into the shadows. The armory door groaned as she pushed it open. Dust, steel, and oil filled her nose. Rows of weapons gleamed under harsh light. And there, in a black case, lay the same M24 rifle from the test. Her hands hovered. She closed her eyes. I swore I'd never do this again. But when she opened them, all she saw were faces. Young recruits, terrified, untrained. Faces that would be broken unless someone acted. Her fingers wrapped around the rifle. The vow was broken. Again. She climbed the abandoned administration building 2 floors up, boots silent against the cracked tiles. She knew this camp inside out, every vent, every corridor, every vantage point. At the window, she laid the rifle down, her body moving with practiced rhythm. Bipod locked, scope aligned, bolt drawn back with a clean snap. The wind was gusting 15 miles an hour from the northwest. Distance, 800 meters. Angle, slightly upward. Her breath slowed. Through the scope, she saw them. 3 figures in tactical gear, moving like predators across the field. Their rifles swung low, scanning. Their formation perfect. They were 10 minutes away from the eastern building. The recruits inside had no idea what was coming. Sophia's finger hovered over the trigger. Her pulse slowed to match her breath. And then memories rushed in. Her father's voice. His hand steady on her shoulder. This skill isn't for killing. It's for protecting. The smell of morning dew in childhood fields. The recoil of rifles heavier than she was at 12 years old. The laughter she no longer remembered clearly. She blinked hard. Focus. She centered the crosshairs on the lead sniper's chest plate, where the sensor would register a kill shot. 1 deep inhale. Half exhale. Hold. The world shrank to silence. She squeezed. The rifle cracked. 800 meters away, the lead sniper's chest plate lit up red. Simulation kill confirmed. The man stumbled back, his rifle dropping. The comm system crackled. Threat neutralized. Exercise concluded. All clear. The danger was gone. Sophia lowered the rifle slowly, her hands steady but her chest tight. She had done it. She had protected them. But she also knew there was no hiding anymore. Boots clattered up the stairs behind her. The door opened. A tall figure stepped inside, his uniform crisp, his eyes sharp. Lieutenant Colonel John Ellis, a man who had served 3 tours beside Michael Whitaker himself. He stopped when he saw her, sitting calm, rifle still warm in her lap. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he saluted. "Your father told me this day would come," Ellis said quietly. "He said when it mattered most, you'd step forward. Not for glory, not for rank, but because someone needed protecting." His words hit harder than the rifle's recoil. Sophia looked down at the watch on her wrist. Her father's watch. Her fingers brushed the scratched glass. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to whisper, "I kept the promise, Dad." Down below, the camp buzzed with rumors. The ghost nurse had saved them. The daughter of Phantom Whitaker had just revealed her true bloodline. But Sophia? She stayed in the quiet of the room, dismantling the rifle piece by piece, her face unreadable. Have you ever been forced to reveal who you really are, not because you wanted to, but because the moment left you no choice? Sophia had. And now the whole world knew it. The simulation was over, but whispers spread fast. Offers, questions, and suspicions were coming. And Sophia would soon face a choice far greater than a single shot. The camp was never the same after that shot. Whispers spread like wildfire, traveling faster than gunfire. The ghost nurse, the quiet shadow who stitched wounds and scrubbed floors, had ended a simulation with a single bullet. 800 meters. Perfect precision. And the way she had stood, the way she had breathed, the way her hands had moved, it was unmistakable. Michael Phantom Whitaker's technique. The recruits spoke in hushed tones at night. "Did you see her stance? I swear I've only seen that in training vids of Phantom himself." Another whispered, "No, she can't be his daughter. Can she?" By the end of the week, they weren't whispers anymore. They were facts carved into stone. Sophia Whitaker, the ghost nurse, was the daughter of a legend. And legends don't stay invisible for long. Colonel John Ellis called her in for a private meeting. His office smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Old photographs of his unit lined the wall, men hardened by war, some gone, some still alive only in memory. He didn't waste time. "Special operations units have already sent me requests," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "They want you, Whitaker. High rank, high pay, missions that matter." Sophia didn't even touch the folder. Her eyes stayed on the colonel, calm, unshaken. "I'm not here to be a weapon," she said softly. "I'm here to heal, to help." Ellis studied her for a long time, then leaned back in his chair, almost smiling. "Just like your father," he muttered. But outside that office, things had shifted. The mockery was gone. The sneers had vanished. Not once did she hear Nurse Know-It-All again. Instead, recruits began approaching her. Not with smirks, but with questions. "Miss Whitaker, could you show me how to steady my breathing before a shot?" "Coach, my stance feels wrong. Could you take a look?" "Please, Sophia, I keep jerking the trigger." "What am I doing wrong?" At first, she tried to wave them off. She wasn't a teacher. She wasn't a leader. She was just here to work in the shadows. But they kept coming. And when she finally gave small corrections, a finger repositioned, a subtle shift in weight, a single whispered tip about wind, the results were immediate. The recruits looked at her like she had handed them a secret no book could teach. Word spread again. Now, they didn't call her ghost nurse. They called her Coach Cass. And this time it wasn't a joke. It was respect. She never held formal classes, never stood at the front of the room. But somehow, she was always surrounded by a small circle. Young soldiers watching her movements, listening to her quiet voice, learning more in 10 minutes with her than they had in weeks of training. Her teaching was understated, almost invisible, but effective. Loosen your grip. The rifle should rest, not fight you. Breathe like the earth breathes. Slow. Patient. Don't chase the target. Let the target fall into your sights. And they listened. They really listened. One afternoon, Colonel Ellis stopped by during one of these impromptu lessons. He watched as Sophia adjusted a recruit's posture with the lightest touch of her hand. When the young man hit his first bullseye, his face lit up, and Sophia gave a single nod, small, almost unnoticeable, but filled with pride. Ellis leaned toward her and murmured, "Your father was like that too. He never had to raise his voice." People listened because they knew his words carried weight. Sophia didn't reply. She just glanced at the watch on her wrist, her father's watch, and touched it gently, as if in silent acknowledgement. 2 weeks later, Ellis called her again. This time, he didn't offer her missions or ranks. He handed her a small, sealed envelope. "This is from your father," he said. "He left it with me years ago. Told me to give it to you only when you'd proven something to yourself." Her breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a letter, written in her father's unmistakable handwriting. "Sophia, if you're reading this, it means you used your skills when they mattered most. It means you understood that our training was never about being the best shooter, but about being the right person in the right moment. You've kept your promise to me, sweetheart. More importantly, you've kept your promise to yourself. I'm proud of you, Dad." Her throat tightened. For a long time, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, for the first time since his death, Sophia smiled. A small smile, but real. That night, she sat alone in the medical bay, the letter in one hand, the watch in the other. The camp outside was still buzzing about her, about the shot, about the daughter of Phantom Whitaker, about the way she was transforming the very atmosphere of the facility. But inside that quiet room, Sophia was just a daughter, just a student, just someone who had finally made peace with the shadow of her past. Has someone ever taught you something so precious that you only truly understood it years later? Sophia had. And now she finally understood. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. And Sophia's vow to remain only a healer would be tested in ways she never imagined. The camp had changed. Where once there was laughter at her expense, now there was silence when she entered a room. Not the silence of mockery, the silence of respect. Recruits followed her like shadows, eager to learn. Officers nodded when she passed. Even Sergeant Kane, who had once called her nurse know-it-all, now avoided her eyes, as if ashamed of his own past ridicule. But Sophia felt no triumph, because she had not stepped forward to prove herself. She had stepped forward because someone had needed her, and that was the only reason that mattered. One evening, under the orange wash of sunset, she sat at the edge of the range. The rifle rested beside her, dismantled, its pieces gleaming in the dying light. Colonel Ellis approached quietly. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stood watching the horizon with her. Finally, he spoke. "You could go back to active duty. The offers still stand. Special units. Recognition. You'd make a name for yourself, Sophia. A legend like your father." Her hands stilled on the rifle. "I don't want to be a legend," she said softly. "I want to be useful." Ellis turned to her, his expression unreadable. "And what if the world needs you to be both?" She didn't answer. She only looked down at her father's watch, its scratched glass reflecting the fading sun. Days passed. She remained in the background, just as she had always wanted. But now, her shadow drew others closer instead of pushing them away. She didn't run drills. She didn't shout commands. She simply was. And somehow, that was enough. The recruits called her Coach Cass now, and not one said it with a grin. They came to her not only for lessons in marksmanship, but for lessons in patience, in silence, in control, in legacy. One night, a storm raged across the camp. Thunder rolled like artillery. Rain lashed the barracks. Sophia sat alone in the medical bay, the letter from her father spread out before her. Her fingers traced the ink. The words burned into her memory. Not the best shooter. The right person in the right moment. Her eyes closed. She could almost hear his voice again, almost feel his hand steadying hers on the rifle, almost smell the damp earth of those early mornings they had shared. Tears came, slow and silent. But for once, she didn't fight them. Because they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of release. By dawn, the storm had passed. The camp was quiet. The recruits slept soundly, their dreams perhaps filled with the shots they now believed they could make. Sophia stepped outside into the morning air. She looked toward the horizon, the first light of day spilling over the trees. And she whispered into the silence, "I understand now, Dad." She didn't need the world to know her name. She didn't need medals or recognition or the echo of applause. Her father had left her a legacy, not of fame, but of responsibility. And she had chosen to carry it not by being the loudest, but by being exactly what he had taught her to be, present in the moment that mattered. Because sometimes the world doesn't need heroes who demand recognition. Sometimes the world needs ghosts, quiet, patient, watching, until the moment comes. And then one perfect shot. Have you ever realized that the people who change the world the most aren't the loud ones, but the quiet ones? Tell me, who is the silent protector in your life? The one who never needed applause, but made all the difference?